Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. We have a great show for you today. We have Nate Terracio, who's the director of the Koger Center for the Arts. We get into all things Koger Center, why people shouldn't call it the Kroger Center. We talk about all the different performances they have, some of the big names that they have, and why Columbia is so lucky to have such a great center for the arts. So I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Here for the Health of It podcast. I'm Dr. Randy here with Dr. Tom, as always, and we have a great show for you today. We have Terracio. Did I get it?
Yes,
Did I say it right? Yes.
That's my
Mr.
last name.
Terracio.
Mr. Terracio.
You got so excited about his last name, you forgot his first. That's a first.
Nate Terracio, the director for the Koger Center for the Arts.
That's right.
Not
Yes.
to be called Kroger Center for the Arts, which I think a lot of people
No,
do.
you thought it was that for years.
I
He thought it was.
I thought it was sponsored by Kroger.
Well,
the-
it
like
would
the
make
stadium.
sense.
Yeah.
We often get, when we have out of town guests coming in, you know how if somebody's on a big tour, TV
Right,
stations
right.
do this too, where they'll just do a bunch of pickups where they're like, "Hey, we're coming to the wherever," and about half the time we get those,
Kroger,
they say, "We're coming to the Kroger Center," and we're like, we've got to throw it. I can't use it.
Right.
Does that drive you? Does that irritate you when people say it wrong?
No, I mean, I think we've been called the Kroger Center for 36 years now. So,
Is it named after somebody? Like, is there
it's
a
named
Koger?
after Ira and Nancy Koger.
Got it.
They put up some money in like '85 when the plans were being drawn up and all of that, and really sort of kickstarted the fundraising campaign. So they named it after the Kogers.
Okay.
And they created a whole. His big thing was office, like medical park office suites. So there are ironically some Koger centers around the country, less now than there used to be, but it would be like a side of the road. There'd be like a medical park,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Koger Center. So there are
Gotcha.
several other Koger centers
Oh,
still in existence, and what they are like strip malls.
Has anyone ever tried to rename it
We are open to discussion.
the highest bidder?
Absolutely.
I love that.
Oh, what do you think
Yes.
the dollar amount is?
Who gets to
rename it?
make
Do
the
you have any
decision?
idea?
Yeah.
Well, we're part of the University of South Carolina, so it's unfortunately we can't make a deal here today right now,
no.
or else we could,
So I got like $10 in my wallet. I was going to put towards it.
So that's a cool thing. So you have been there for how long?
I've been with the Koger Center since 2016, so this is
9 years.
8 full years. I'm in my 9th year.
Yep. And before
I
that,
came as the assistant director, and I took over as director about 18 months in. That was in April of 18.
oh, did you push him out?
No, I think the whole reason I came was that the university was trying to do a thing where they had succession planning, which is probably smart for any business that's got more than, say, 6 or 8 employees, that you should have a plan for in case somebody
Right.
on the top
Yes.
leaves. Like, what do you do? And they were doing that across the university, and they realized that the Koger Center didn't actually have a succession plan, so they created the. He was sort of at retirement age, and they,
Right.
we were like, we should have a plan. So I think essentially my coming allowed him to then plan for his retirement. And I think he was sort of not retiring because,
Yeah.
what was going to happen?
Who was going to take
right?
over?
You work a job like that for 15, 20 years, and then it's your life. You don't want to see, you want to make sure it's in good hands. You want to know there's a plan. So I think it wasn't that I pushed him out. It was just that I allowed him to, to transition to leave. Because
You start poisoning his food a little bit here and there.
Yeah, I
Like,
started telling everyone how bad of a job he's doing. Senile old guy can't even do
makes it a lot
PowerPoints.
easier.
So and then it was, you learn in a new job, and then we had COVID, so it was like,
Oh, yeah.
and then it was everything. You had to learn everything all over again.
Right.
So it's been fits and starts.
What was happening at the Koger Center during COVID? I have no idea. Like, were there still shows?
We found out that COVID was a sort of global problem in March of 2020. We went into a week with some shows. We were then sort of told on a Thursday that the university was shutting down on Friday.
Wow.
We had a show Friday night, and then we had the Philharmonic on Saturday, and we did the performance, but with no audience, and they just live streamed it.
Gotcha.
And live stream was not a thing that we had
ever done.
maybe ever done. So we
Wow.
sort of figured it out in that 24-hour window between the university shutting down and the show so we, the show must go on, but
Sure.
so it happened really quick, and we were then closed to the public until Thanksgiving. So it was like what
Just
is that?
nothing.
6 months
Wow.
of basically nothing.
Today's episode is brought to you by our sponsor, Columbia Family Chiropractic, with 3 easy-to-get-to locations, one in Forest Acres, which is by Trader Joe's, one in O'Neill Court by the DMV, and one in the Northeast by Sand Hills. You'll be sure to have somewhere near you. They offer a ton of services from corrective care, on-site digital x-rays, spinal decompression for bulging or herniated discs, dry needling for injuries, pediatric care, and a Class 4 laser. They accept all your major insurances. And if you mention this ad, you'll get a discount on your first appointment. Check out their website at cfc4health.com or Google Columbia Family Chiropractic. That's cfc4health.com.
So, well, and people would say, well, what were you doing? And unfortunately,
out.
because no one knew, I rescheduled everything 6 times. Like people were like, can we move these dates? And so we would reschedule.
Sure.
So you'd reschedule something for 2 months from now, and you'd go through you'd spend 60 hours a week, rescheduling and convincing people to give up this date so that you can fit this in, and then you would start over again. All right, listen, none of these dates are going to happen, and you would do the same thing over.
Right.
We did it over and over, and then finally, people were like, everything's canceled. We're not going to stop rescheduling. And then we had to figure out how do you open and follow the health protocols, and from a liability point of view, how do you open and try to keep people safe from getting sick. And so when we reopened in Thanksgiving of 2020. And from the next sort of 8 or 9 months, we did social distancing. So we sort of maximum capacity of 480 or 500.
Yeah.
And we're normally 2,250. So, we sold every 4th seat, every other row, front to back.
Wild.
It's crazy.
Which, in hindsight, maybe was a bad idea. But what it did allow people to do is, a lot of folks get grant money funding to do programming, and they were all worried that if they didn't do any programming, they would have to give the money back. So, and when local arts organizations are funded largely by grant and less from ticket sales, so one of the things that allowed people to do was to do programming, try to figure out how to do it for less money, so that they could. So they could actually manage on 500 or 600 ticket sales. So the ballet did the Nutcracker, and we sort of sold out because you're only selling 450, 500 seats. But because most of the funding is sponsorship and grant money and that kind of stuff, by doing it, they didn't have to give any of that back. And I kept thinking to myself, what jerk is going to ask you for the money back, right? Oh, you didn't put on the ballet because of COVID.
Right.
We want the money back, but I guess, people were worried that somebody might actually, push the issue. So we did a lot of local organizations, had them in and work with them so they could do stuff. So we weren't nearly as busy as we are now, but we were open for about 8 months with, this kind of social distant seating.
Yeah.
And then finally, in 21, we sort of went back to,
Let it rip.
Let it rip.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there would be shows that would say, well, we would like the audience to wear masks. And I would say, we'll ask people to wear masks.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, if they don't wear masks, we won't perform. And I'm like, well, then I can tell you.
Not the right place
I
to come.
can't go through one by one and make sure all 2,000 people are wearing a mask, man.
Yeah.
We can put up signs. We can tell people, be considerate. This show wants you to wear them. But,
Yeah.
I love how you use the phrase, the show must go on, because I just picture you yelling that regularly.
Monday mornings.
That's everyone. They just wake up in the morning and start screaming.
Come on, people. Chop, chop. No, it's like if you've been in that sort of career, that is the mindset. You don't cancel for anything.
You just figure it out.
Yeah. And so closing for COVID was like a real culture shock.
Yeah.
I mean, people didn't close for, for any reason. One of the big problems would be like here in Midlands is like you'd get snow and people were like, oh, well, the show's not going to happen. And I'm like, this show is off to another city in 3 days.
Right.
So they're going to perform and you can choose to come or not come, but like, we're not like the show isn't canceling just because we've had snow because they're like, well, we just had snow in, Minnesota and we had snow in Iowa and we had snow in West Virginia and we had, and now we're in South Carolina and we're like, well, there's snow. So we're going to keep going.
Yeah.
Right.
So we were used to sort of having to deal with the show must go on mentality. So it was a real culture shock to be like, what do you mean we're not like? There's no audience on Saturday, like the day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
Like we can't. We have 1,000 tickets out. Like we're gonna just tell people not to come. Like how does this work?
Yeah.
And the answer was, yeah, you're just gonna tell people not to come.
Yeah.
And there's always a reason to cancel. If you wanted to find a reason to cancel something, you could find 1,000
all the time.
Right. I think that's part of the mindset comes from nothing is ever ready. Like you could find, oh, can we just put off till tomorrow, right? Because we still have stuff. So you have to have a hard deadline, or else, any number of people would be like, well, I don't feel quite comfortable yet.
Yeah. That's a good quote. Nothing's ever ready.
It isn't.
You just gotta,
Yeah.
I mean, you have
Well,
to.
some things are ready.
Well, yeah.
Like the cake after like it hits a point where you got to pull it out of the oven. It's ready.
Yeah. Where it stops being cake if you leave it in too long. And if you pull it out too soon, it's not cake. It's like there's a middle ground.
Ready spot.
But like having kids, getting married, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You're never ready. It's
Right.
also
Yeah,
the same
that's-
feeling.
You have to stop letting perfect be the enemy of good, right?
Yeah.
You can't, because you can always say, oh, it could be a little bit better. It could be a little bit better. So at some point in time, it's as ready as it's going to be.
Right.
Right.
And the answer to that is always opening night is when it's ready as it's going to be.
Yep.
Whether another night would help, my experience is that if you have 3 days to get a show ready or 4 days to get a show ready, you feel exactly the same way 20 minutes before the curtain opens. It's like that extra day didn't suddenly make life, less stressful. It just meant you were stressed for longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Getting the show ready. So
Yeah. So you're speaking of traveling and they go city to city. What are what are the vehicles that are showing up and where do they go? Like I imagine stage and all this stuff. Is it a lot?
it can be.
Semis and
Yes. It depends on what it is. So this Friday we have Joe Gatto, a stand-up comedian, and they're going to come in like a minivan.
right.
Right? I mean, it's like two guys. And they're like, can you give us a microphone and a stool?
Yeah.
So, and we'll have the similar size crowd as that we might for a Broadway show.
Right.
And something like Wicked or Lion King comes in 14 53-foot tractor trailers.
Wow.
And
Massive.
I mean, it's sort of like it rivals loading into an arena.
Yeah.
And then a typical show will be 2 to 4 trucks.
Gotcha.
The local ballet company comes in sort of like 2 26-foot box trucks. Different sizes depending on whether it's a local show or a big national tour.
What's the load-in like how many days or how much time? What's the window they have to get that unloaded, set up, and then taken down and gone?
For most things, the load-in is 6 to 8 hours.
No
So
kidding.
we load in most stuff same day.
Wow.
So if you have you have 7:30 show, you start at 8 in the morning. You try to get done by 5. Everyone takes a dinner break, and then you do like a sound check and open the house. And if a show's on top of things, they have built in a little wiggle room. So
Right.
they might finish at 4 if everything goes well, because they've got a sort of an hour built in that if there's a problem, they have a little extra time. And for something like a Wicked or a Hamilton, we would start 2 days. Like the biggest thing we've done like that, we've started 2 days early. So we might start on a Monday, and you do Monday, Tuesday,
Load in,
Wednesday,
set up,
and the show Wednesday night. Those are things that have 14 tractor trailers. But our typical Broadway shows, which have 4, we load in at 8.
And what sort of stuff do you guys provide if needed? Like, do you guys provide all the soundboards and all that, or are a lot of shows coming in with their own?
Everything brings their own stuff.
Gotcha. Just easier to,
There's a lot of choices out there. I mean, it's like probably any field.
Right.
You have equipment, be it medical equipment, theatrical equipment.
Yeah.
You get used to using one thing, and then somebody says, "Oh, well, this is just as good," but you're like, "Yeah, but I don't. This has foot pedals instead of hand thing." So, and I don't want to have to figure out how to do this in the 45 minutes between when we finish loading and the show starts. So most people travel with their own equipment because it's what they're used to.
And lights. That's, I guess, the one I was thinking.
Yes, so they bring lighting, sound, scenic, all of it. Now, when we host local companies, we provide lights and sound.
Gotcha.
So we have like the ballet performing in 2 weeks from Romeo and Juliet. They'll bring in the scenic pieces, but the lighting, the audio, all of that is provided by us.
Gotcha.
Can you tell who's doing what in the setup process by how they look or what they're wearing? Like I always think of like the ponytail and the oversized untucked shirt as the sound guy.
Well, I will say that you can, generally speaking, spot the stage hands from the actors. You know who's working off stage and who's working on stage. Largely based on how they're dressed. But no. I think it's dangerous to try to guess who's the sound guy versus who's the lighting person.
Right.
Because I always joke when we were building this place, we could tell, oh, that's an electrician. Oh, that's a plumber. Oh, that's a framer, just by what they wore and how they walked. And,
sure. Yeah, there's probably a little bit of truth to that, even in the theater. People tend to gravitate towards whatever specialty they have for a reason. Yeah. And so many of the stagehands will do, I mean, one of the problems is for stereotyping is that so many of the stagehands will be both an electrician and a sound person. Right. And, like they have multiple, the goal with a good stagehand is that you can sort of do any of the jobs. Anywhere, sort of whatever's needed, you can sort of bounce between departments. So so you
that makes sense.
You may give off some electrician and some audio vibes, right? Because you sort of do them both rather than being too pigeonholed.
I see.
Do you ever get I guess tell us about what the director does. I'd like just kind of a broad stroke of what
I do.
Yeah,
okay.
Just kind of give us that.
So what's tricky, and I didn't think about going into this job, is the Koger Center is sort of two things. It is the building. It's the physical space that people come to, and then it's all the events that happen inside. And I felt like I was prepared and excited to deal with all the stuff that happens inside. But what I realized is at least 50% of my day is the building. Yeah. So it is, the water main behind us broke and they have shut the street down. And so now if you come to the box office, you can't park there because they're digging up the broken water main, and thank goodness our water main is not on that street. So we still have water, but sometimes that happens and you don't have water. So then you've got to figure out what does that mean for the building to not have water and where can we send people to use the bathroom and all the rest of it. I realized that probably 5 to 10% of my entire job description is HVAC because too hot and too cold. No one really cares how good the show is if they're either sweating or freezing to death. Mm-hmm. So
great point.
We spend so much time trying to make sure the maintenance is done and the HVAC is working properly and filters are changed and that you have the right setting and you give yourself enough time that if you need to cool things off because, when a building is 140,000 square feet, you can't just snap your fingers and change the temperature. Like it takes time.
And jam 2,000 hot bodies in there.
Right. And you put 2,000 people in and the temperature will jump by 3 or 4 degrees.
Right.
So you have to, if you want it to be 70 degrees, you've got to make sure that it's at least 66 before the show starts. So when people walk in there, it's freezing in here, and you're like, well, by the time it ends, it won't be freezing.
Listen, I'm glad you think of that. I'm a big temperature guy.
And what I've noticed is that at 69.9 degrees, no one complains that it's hot, but at 70.1 degrees, people start complaining that it's hot. It is the time difference, like the temperature difference in which you go from no complaints to complaints is such a small amount of time. Like, like such a small degree difference. It's, these are the things that I didn't think about going into the job was elevator maintenance and leaky roofs and, changing light bulbs and HVAC. And so a lot of it is making sure the building's functioning properly and then also dealing with, cosmetic maintenance. Right. Like you come to this building and you're like, this is brand new. Everything looks like, so you have this sense that, this is a nice place. Like I'm going to get good service here. Right. And, for a long time we had carpet that was 18 years old and you walked in and I realized that not everyone walks into a place and starts looking at fixtures and finishes because I've become that lunatic. But I would walk in and I'd be like, this carpet is filthy.
Right.
Like what must people think when they come in? So it's, we've been trying to do cosmetic changes and then just physical changes that make the patron experience better.
Nice.
Adding extra, bathroom space because there's never enough bathrooms and trying to accommodate, the disabled population, people who need accommodations because we were built pre-ADA. So constantly learning about like, oh, we could do this and that would help. Not because we have a huge number of people who need accommodations coming on a regular basis, but as the population ages, more and more people find that those accommodations that they don't need are super helpful, right? So there are people who want stuff and need stuff, and we want to be able to provide the people who need it. We want to accommodate those people who need it for sure. But we're also finding is anytime we do that, there's a bunch of people who want those same accommodations who are also super pleased, that we've made them. So there's a lot that goes into just the building.
So is it stressful? Would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, how stressful is it?
9.5. But part of that is self-imposed stress because you want things to be better.
Yeah.
And, so you have to, if there's not a deadline, then stuff doesn't happen. I mean, this is just life. Right. Like if somebody says, would you mow the yard between now and December? You're like, sure, I got it. But chances are it's going to be closer to December before you do it. So you sometimes have to say, like, will you mow the yard by the end of the week? Or else it doesn't get mowed in a timely fashion. So similarly, sometimes I will be the cause of my own angst because I will just decide, like, we've got to get this. This has been it's been going on far too long.
Your list grows, and then you just got to
and at some point in time, you have to put deadlines down, or else you can't cross things off the list because there's always a reason to like put something off and do something easier. So it can be stressful just because I want to see progress be made.
How much coffee you have in a day?
I have I've sort of stopped drinking coffee.
What?
I did too. It's
All right,
great.
Let's talk about that. What do you do? What are you hammering down to keep you focused?
I'm so. This is a medical podcast, right? So, like, I had cancer, and coming out of cancer, I've had to sort of like change my
clean up everything,
entire lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that went to the doctor at age 47 and was told that I had missed. I should have already had a colonoscopy, and I was told. And I was like, what do you, like, I'm not 50. Like, and they were, oh, no, you're supposed to get a colonoscopy at 45. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll go in for this colonoscopy that everyone, jokes about.
Looks forward to.
Yeah.
Right.
Randy looks forward to it.
And so I went in and I had cancer.
Jeez.
And no symptoms, nothing?
No. Well, I say no symptoms in that when you, when something is drawn to your attention, and you start to realize that perhaps some parts of your there maybe were some symptoms,
Yeah.
right? Like
Like a
nothing,
lot of gas, maybe, or something, where you're just like,
nothing-
that's normal.
nothing was obviously wrong, but when you start to like really look at the entire list of things, and you're like, well, this happens sometimes, and that happens sometimes, and
Right, right.
this could be like I could see right, and then you start seeing like, on a scale from 1 to 10, you weren't answering 1 to all the questions. You were starting to answer 2 and 3 and 4 to some of the questions, and so you're like, maybe these are actually symptoms, but in your head, you're thinking, well.
Everybody deals with it. Everybody has this.
If a symptom is something, you sort of feel like, well, it must have to be bad for it to be a symptom. But I think sometimes symptoms start small, and then so that you can have symptoms that are just the initial stages of stuff.
Yeah.
So and then 3 surgeries later, knock on wood, cancer free. But I have post all of those surgeries, I have decided that I have to. So I've given up a lot of, like my diet has changed, but also the main thing is that I do not give up sleep anymore.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So I have to get between 7 and 8 hours, and I can, on occasion, I've got to get up early or I can need to stay up late. I can do it, but I used to do that 6 days a week, and now it's like I will do it 1 day a week. So the reason why I don't drink coffee is because I sleep enough.
Yeah.
Like once you start sleeping enough, you don't actually need coffee.
point.
That's what I mean, what did you find?
It was just a habit for me that I did it because other people did it, and it was just like comfortable.
Hey, let's go get coffee. And
yes.
you're like,
or hey, do you want coffee? And it's like, sure, yeah. But
I don't want to be the only one not holding a cup.
Yes, sort of. And I think I feel better without it. And I definitely don't spill on myself as much.
Right.
So I was like,
his clothes are
just
cleaner.
Literally just
That's
the
helpful.
trade-off of not spilling on myself or not like
You
having
save
to do
a
the
bunch
dishes.
of time with dishes and laundry,
Yes.
having given up coffee.
And I think there's just something to it. Some people are so hooked on caffeine day after day after day. I think it's just good to stop sometimes and not have it.
And what I will tell you is if you need to stay up, if you need to be alert and you don't drink coffee and then you have a cup, like you notice there's like you're not drinking coffee to hit a baseline, like you're aware that of its impact on you. You're like, oh wow. I feel better not drinking it.
Yeah. Nice.
So
you get your sleep, you change your diet.
Yeah.
H2O.
Drinking lots of water.
Yes, I could still drink more water. I was actually very well hydrated before because I was a big sort of like sparkling water guy, and I've tried to cut carbonation out of my diet.
Yep.
And it is hard to drink 2 liters of still water for me personally.
Right.
Yep.
I could drink 2 liters of sparkling water.
You need a little pizzazz, like
I need something.
Yeah.
I need something. So I'm still trying to figure out how to like get a beverage going that doesn't have a bunch of calories, that hydrates, that's not sparkling.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I saw something on Instagram the other day about like the carbonation is CO2, which is the point they were making was like your body's trying to like when you breathe,
you're breathing out.
You're breathing it out, so it's a waste product. And when we drink that stuff, it's just like creating more waste that your body wants to get rid of. So I was like, that's a good way to like. That's a good way to like think about it.
Yeah.
Well, and so if you could just get your stress from a 9.5 down to like a 6-ish.
Yeah. I mean, so to be honest with you, I think 9.5 is probably a bit extreme. It's probably more like a 7, but yes. I mean, the other thing that I've had to do is decide what to care about and when to let things go.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you just have to say, all right, that's good enough.
Yeah.
And then people are like, what do you mean that's good enough? And you're like, I cannot handle the stress level of trying to fix whatever, it's like, it
just is what it is.
Sometimes you just have to say I can't, like, we're going to call that finished and we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Which is, hasn't been an easy transition.
Right.
Because I like, I really do feel that the revising of stuff and trying to make things better is a process, right? So if you give something your attention and you think, well, this is good. If you actually sort of say, all right, let's revise it one more time, it will get better, and you can keep doing that for quite some time. Yeah. And there's a value to taking the time and trying to revise stuff and try to make stuff better. I do think if something's really important, it's worth taking the time to try to make things good. But sometimes I think you have to say, not everything in my life needs that same level of attention to detail.
Yep.
So really that's what it's about. It's about giving the same attention to the things that you think are actually important. But if things aren't really that important, you don't need to give it that level of detail to the things that aren't important.
Yeah.
And that's been the process, is trying to figure out like when to say like, this doesn't need me. Like it could happen, it could not happen, it could happen poorly, it could be perfect. But none of that really moves the needle enough for me to be involved. And sometimes you have to hand things to other people so that you can say, like you go through the process of making it as good as you can. Like I don't, if you're everyone's always coming to you and you're the only person who can fix things.
Yeah, they have all the ideas, but nobody wants to do it. They want you to do it.
That is exactly.
You should fix this. You should fix this.
Yeah. Well, funny you say that. One of the biggest ways to take stuff off your plate, I have learned, is when somebody says like, "Hey, I have this great idea," and you just go, "I love it. Let me know how it goes."
Yes.
And then they go, "What do you mean?" And like, yeah, go for it. If you have questions, I'm right here. But I think you should do that. They no longer think it's a great idea.
They're gone. Yeah,
100%.
Or at least they stop coming to you with so many great ideas,
right?
Because they realize that they're going to be responsible for said great ideas. But yeah, you do have to hand this stuff off to other people. Right? You can't just do everything yourself.
Like this, like the CEO of Disney isn't going to be sewing the nose onto Mickey Mouse.
Correct.
and he doesn't need to inspect every character's nose either.
It doesn't.
But it's a hard skill to develop, I think, or for me, extremely hard skill to develop, to figure out where to put all your time and where not to, and what to freak out about and what not to freak out about.
Yeah, it is. It's tricky, and sometimes you get it wrong. And you just have to be okay with that.
Yep. It's good. What was your schooling like? What was your background before getting this position? Before 2018?
I worked
2016.
I worked in New York. I was in the production department at Jazz at Lincoln Center. I did that for 4 years, which was for me kind of a big change because I'd been more in the theatrical production side of things, and so that was like a shift into more music. And one of the things that the general public wouldn't necessarily know is Jazz at Lincoln Center obviously does a lot of jazz programming. Surprise, surprise. But it's a rental venue, and they host 300 days a year some performance that is, most of it is not jazz.
Right.
Most of the rental stuff is not jazz. So you work on, ballet and opera, and you work on big television upfront productions, and you work on corporate meetings, and you work on just the most random stuff. Television stuff would come in. And so for me, it was a real way to take the same skill set, which was looking at, production, live entertainment stuff, but really branching out into different types of live entertainment.
Yeah.
So you learn how to load in a piece of theater or musical, and then you realize that it's all the same skills to load in a rock and roll show. It's just different stuff.
Right.
So that allowed me to really expand, learn a lot about a lot of different types of live entertainment, and really figure out how to stop relying on a specific knowledge of an event and really turn that knowledge into a process for
like a system.
A system. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
good.
New York and Columbia are pretty similar then, I would
Oh
imagine.
yeah, very.
Not much of a shift there. In New York, so if you have 300 shows going on every single year in the same venue. There really is something going on all the time.
Really is, yes.
York.
I mean, but what I will say is that we had last year the Koger Center had 205 ticketed events.
Wow.
And
Wow, that's way more than I thought.
And some non-ticketed events as well. So we're surprisingly busy. I think 2023. I haven't done the math yet for 2024, but 2023 we were open like 331 days. Out of 365,
Wow.
and and the university is closed for sort of 10 days between Christmas Eve and New Year's Day. So, of the whatever 34 days we were closed, 10 of them were that.
Right.
So, we're very busy as well. But in New York, there were 2 venues, and so we were like it was just constant.
Are you the one that decides on the event schedule, the talent coming in, all of that, or what part do you play in that?
So there's me and there's an assistant director, and between the two of us, we book the spaces, the calendar. We really have the one major event space, but one of the changes that we've done since I've been the director is we've started using the other spaces other than the auditorium for performances, because one of the problems that we had with being able to host as many things as people wanted to host is like the symphony would do a dress rehearsal on a Wednesday and a performance on a Thursday. Mm-hmm. But you can't sell tickets to something on the Wednesday because the symphony is in there doing a dress rehearsal. Yeah. But if you do a jazz show in the lobby for 150 people, you can do that on Wednesday while the symphony's rehearsing. Yeah. And so now you can essentially double book yourself. You can have an audience in on a Wednesday and have something small and intimate, and then on Thursday you can have the symphony. So we've started using the lobby space. We've converted or we're still in the process of converting the rehearsal room, which is like 4,000 square feet of like completely open, 20-foot tall ceiling space, into a black box theater, so that we can do events in there. We do corporate-y things in the lobby, like trade show kind of stuff. We'll do that kind of stuff in the lobby with tables, and so we've got like Monday of next week we've got a rehearsal in the morning in the auditorium, but then in the evening we've got a whole bunch of tables and people coming, and sort of like you'd see at the fairgrounds. Like, we're doing that kind of thing. We have a gallery on the second floor that we host meetings and dinners and luncheons and classes and whatnot in. Wow. So we've really expanded from just having a couple of 3-4 big shows a week sometimes to still having 3-4 big shows a week, but also having 2 or 3 meetings, a dinner thing, 2 small performances. So, that's really expanded the use of the facility. And I think it both grows audience for art forms. So like our jazz series we've been doing for 5 years. And after we did it sort of for 4 years, we were able to then bring Jazz at Lincoln Center down, and, we got 1,200 people to come.
Right.
But the only reason why I got 1,200 people to come, I'm pretty sure, is because we have been doing these shows for 100 to 150 people, 6 times a year for 3 or 4 years. So we have built up 1,200 people who have come to see jazz. And now you can try to convince them all to come for some special thing, like all at once. Yeah. But that's part of the process, is to like build an audience. And then I think even just you have a corporate meeting for 25 people, they come in, they see the Broadway schedule, and they're like, oh, wow, I didn't, we've got 6 coming. Like, I'd like, so I think you build an audience for the venue and the shows by just having people come, whether it's for something similar, like a music performance, or whether it's completely different, just a corporate meeting. But every time somebody comes in the building, they see what's happening, and they're reminded of that you exist, and they maybe find something that they would like to come back and see, because I think some people come to the Nutcracker every year and that's all they ever do. and they fail to realize that maybe they want to come see the Tina Turner musical.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because they're like, oh, I'd love to see. You're right. You know, because they just think, oh, I don't, the ballet. My kids want me to take them to the ballet.
Right.
I don't ever want to go to that place. But then they think, oh, well, I could come and do something that I want to do.
Yeah.
Well, so that was one of my questions. What would your recommendation? What shows would you recommend for someone who maybe doesn't typically go to a lot of them? And specifically more like guys. Like my wife could probably name off
Sure.
every single one. I want to go to those, but then I have to decide which one.
That you want
If
to go?
I'm buying the tickets, which one am I going to take her to?
I think the Broadway season's a pretty easy lift. I mean,
He loves Mean Girls, and he didn't even go to that.
I do love Mean Girls
Right?
so much. I know.
He missed it.
you missed it.
It's, you know how like you're nostalgic sometimes
right?
about something from like 25 years ago, and you just don't want to mess with it.
Yeah.
I don't even want to rewatch it because I just like want to remember it how I remember it.
It was perfect the first time.
Yes.
I don't need to mess that up. No, the Broadway shows I think are an easy lift for everyone. They're high production values. The talent on stage is 9.5 out of 10 times very, very good. And there's a lot of visual stimulation. Like the production values are high, so it's not. You don't have to just go and say like the symphony can be challenging because it is principally about the music, and if you're not into the music, there's very little else to like.
Look at.
I like to watch them. Like I really do like to sit on the second level so I can see the symphony.
Yeah.
And I like to watch what they're doing, so I like that. But let's face it, it's not a lot of whiz bang, right? You're really there for the music. But with Broadway, there's
Whiz bang's a
Yeah,
good word.
man.
Is that have you heard that one more?
That's in the biz, I guess.
Got to use whiz bang more.
But with the Broadway shows, there's a lot of special effects, whatever they are.
Yeah.
So I think the Broadway shows are a good entry point for people, and
we just look it up online. Is that how we know?
Koger Center for the Arts.com, and we've got this Broadway season on our website, but then you can look at the calendar and see what shows are coming up.
Yep.
And there's usually the season has usually got like sort of a big name, something that is a crowd pleaser.
Yeah.
This year it would be probably Les Mis. We've got usually something that's based on a movie or something like that. So we had, if it's already happened, but we had How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which is based on the 50s, television show. Okay. But also that was a great one for the family. But people come in, knowing a couple of the songs, You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch, that kind of stuff. We usually have something that's more modern. So we had 2 this year. We had Ain't Too Proud, which was the Temptations musical. Mm-hmm. So 90% of the songs because it's like all of the Temptations hits. Similarly, we've got Tina, the Tina Turner story coming, and you will probably know all of the songs because there are probably some Tina Turner songs that I'm just guessing that the 3 of us are probably not diehard Tina Turner fans. Right. So there's going to be some songs you're like, I don't know that song.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm assuming that most of her hits are used. And so you're going to know the music, but they're going to tell the sort of story of Tina Turner's life, and you will think that you know some of that, but some of it you're going to learn stuff about her journey. So there's usually something like that, and then we try to do something that's a little more theatrical avant-garde for the folks that are really into Broadway and want something. So we have 2 of those this year. We've got Hadestown, which won 8 or 9 Tonys, but it's the story of Orpheus and Eurydice. This is she gets taken to Hades and he has to go down
Greek
to
god
so
stuff.
it's like Greek mythology.
Yeah.
So it's a little dark and and it's not a happy ending.
Yeah.
But it won best score, best choreography, best musical, best script. But it's not sort of a feel good bubblegum Mean Girls of a and then we have something that's a little more modern in that we've got Six, the musical, which is more of the sort of in the Hamilton vibe in that the music is very modern. Like it's more of that sort of like hip hop inspired. So it's not a rap musical, but the music sounds a lot more like, you know, music of the past 25 years than it does Broadway music, which even modern Broadway shows still sometimes sound like the music's from a bygone era.
Right.
So it's a very modern sort of musical. And its story is the 6 wives of Henry VIII. So, you know, telling their various stories. And it's just basically six women on stage.
Nice. I think my wife went and saw that in New York.
Yeah. It's relatively new. There's a lot of women I know.
What's the
very
demographic
excited.
primarily that are showing up? It's got to be like 90% women.
Well, so here's the thing: the ticket buying audience is 70% women.
Yeah,
but
they bring a lot. Yeah,
the attendance.
But the attendance is closer to 50-50
Yeah, nice.
because you know I think a lot of times you know there's a date involved,
right?
And but it's probably closer to 60-40 attendance, but definitely I think women tend to be driving the attendance at the Koger Center for most events.
How hard? So when you guys are booking these events out, I guess how far out are you booking, and then how hard is it to get what you want? Like are shows coming to you guys and being like, "Hey, we'd love to come to Columbia," or is it the other way around?
It's more the other way around. So Columbia is really a tertiary market. I would say that Greenville and Charleston have turned themselves into like secondary markets, but we don't have a city big enough to really be a primary market for Broadway in the state of South Carolina. I would say Charlotte may be a primary market for that kind of thing, but one of the challenges is Charleston, Greenville, and Charlotte are all very close to Columbia, which really hamstrings us because shows will come through those markets, but they don't necessarily want to play Greenville followed by Columbia back to back because we're so close together. Or Charlotte, Columbia back to back because we're so close together. So that's a challenge.
Yep.
The other thing is the Broadway's a subscription, and in all of those cities, including Columbia, we have subscribers. And right now we are a 3-night subscription market, meaning every show comes for a minimum of 3 nights.
Gotcha.
We do Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then for something big like Les Mis, we will have 8 shows. We'll have Tuesday through Sunday, but we're not quite at a market where we can sell out a full week for everything. So we need to continue to grow. I think the size of the metropolitan area is big enough, but we just need to grow the sort of arts market to a point where we could get a full week of subscriptions, and then we would start to be in a point where we could make the jump to be a secondary market.
Sure.
Because tours will go out and they will start by going to places sort of like between 2 and 12 weeks. So like 2 weeks is a minimum, but they would really like to go for as long as possible because there's the expense of loading in and loading out.
Right.
Yep.
So the less times you can load in, load out, the better it is for the bottom line. And then there are shows that go out would love to do more than 1 week, but typically we'll do 1 week in a lot of places. In some places they'll do 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but they don't typically do long sit downs, but they will sit down for a week. And so that's the case with, say, Les Mis or Six. The reason why we have them for a full week is that they won't come for less.
Oh,
so if you want those shows, you have to say we will do 8 shows.
Sure.
And then you have shows that do what are called split weeks. So you do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in one market, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday in another market. So what we would hope to do in the next couple of years is flip-flop from a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and try to do 5 shows and have a subscription where we do 5 shows every as a minimum, and then you would tack on the front end and go from a 5 to an 8. So maybe over the next 6 or 8 years we may grow into a bigger market. But 1 week show, there's a lot of stuff that we can't get unless we will take them for a week.
Right.
And we can really only sell enough tickets to do that one or two shows, and not all 6.
It's interesting.
Yet. So we're still trying to grow the crowd.
And like, how do you know what's hot out there? Like, because you guys are booking like months from now. And
Yes, we've so the Broadway series is promoted by Broadway and Columbia, which is an outside entity that basically partners with us, but like really just rents the space and promotes. So they're actually the ones that make all of the final decisions.
Gotcha.
But we really worked very closely together because we've got to make sure that the dates are available and. And they have a lot of questions like, well, if we've got 2 different shows, what do you think we'll do better? And we'll talk to some people and try to see what excites people.
Gotcha.
So they use us as a source of information, but one of the nice things that keeps me at a 7 instead of a 9.5, and my stress level is if sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I don't have to make the decision though.
Yeah.
So let me know what you decide.
That's nice.
Right. Because you sort of feel like, oh, I don't know. Like I don't know will people come to this one?
Right.
It's like, seems like a good idea, but so that we put our, money on the table the same way that they do. But they've basically locked in next year's shows, and we are
So 26 is already.
We've almost everything books on a school calendar year, right? So we've booked 25, 26, and we're currently booking 26, 27. So we're like actually actively holding stuff on the calendar for 26, 27 and working to fill in 26, 27.
Do you have a dream show on your vision board somewhere in your bathroom?
The one that I would like to bring because people have asked about it for decades is Phantom of the Opera.
Yes.
Because it's never come to Columbia, and it's closed on Broadway, and it's going to go out on tour, and everyone is asking about it. So I feel like it didn't, when it was out touring before, it didn't come to Columbia because we didn't have the technical capabilities to host the show. Like we didn't have the technical needs. Like we couldn't actually rig and like load the show in. So we've made a bunch of improvements over the past 6 or 8 years that would allow us to host the show. So that would be a real payoff.
Yeah,
I think
that would be massive.
Do I like it? Yeah, it's sure. I've seen it. But like, so I'm not personally like super excited to like see Phantom of the Opera again. But I would love to be able to tell people it's coming.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes you get more out of it sort of vicariously, right? Like when you tell people something's coming and they're very excited. Like, so I think that when we finally get to announce that Phantom's coming, people will be super excited. And so that I'm looking forward to.
That's good. That was my first ever kind of musical show that I went to in Vegas, and it was crazy.
It is.
There was lights and fire and coming down from the ceiling, and I wasn't ready for any of it.
Yeah. And you can only imagine like how far the industry has come. Like, since then.
Yeah, that was probably 17 years ago.
Yeah, it's come a long way since then. But so that would be the one I would say. I mean, it was Hamilton up until last year when we had Hamilton.
Yeah.
Because people have been, everyone had
Wanted
to
that,
see Hamilton. So, and now it's like, now I realize like we really need to be, watching to see what the next big show is. But the problem is you only get a Phantom of the Opera, a Les Mis, a Hamilton, like a Wicked, a Lion King, like about once a decade you get one of those. So it was Hamilton, and then before Hamilton it was Wicked, and before Wicked it was Lion King, and before Lion King it was Chicago, and then and now Chicago's still on tour and still running in New York, but now the problem is that Chicago's been running for like 30 years, so people are like, well, I've seen it a couple times. And it's not the sort of it's still just as good, but it's hard to find people who haven't seen it not just once but more than once.
Right. I accidentally went to Chicago in the movie theater. I didn't know what it was.
Oh.
And I sat down, they started singing. I'm like, oh God.
Did I? I thought this was a gangster
I thought
film.
it was like an action. It was like a 50-cent movie night. I was like, I'll just go to whatever. And I just looked at the... It's like
well, did you stay?
No. Well, I stayed for like too long. It was like, I didn't figure it out.
Until you were like, oh.
It's like halfway done. I'm like, oh, this is a musical. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah, well, that was the one with Renee Zellweger and
Yes.
Richard Gere.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the cover was like, oh, this is going to be an awesome
Yeah.
show. And then I was like, whoa, they're singing. And there's no like,
Listen,
And I'm here by myself.
yeah, and I was
you're-
like, it was like in high school. Like it was a long
listen,
time
you're
ago
older
where
and
I
more
was like,
mature now. You would actually love Chicago. I can guarantee you.
right.
Yeah. So there's one called Stomp, I think I've heard
Yes,
of, where they
Stomp.
have the garbage cans
Yep,
and they're kind of
yep.
stomping.
Yes, we've had Stomp at the
had
Koger
Stomp.
Center. Yeah.
And then I've heard of one called Cats.
We had Cats a couple of years ago. Yeah.
I think
Are we
that's-
just going to name all the
I
Yeah.
think that's the extent. I think those are the ones
Is there
that I know.
are there any
What
other
else?
musicals you can think of? No, I can't think of anything else.
That's why I like hearing about it, though, is
Yeah.
because I think as I get older, I'm more
You're
interested
more
in the
open-minded.
arts.
Yeah.
Yes. Like when I was younger, everything was just like utility. Is this absolutely necessary for
Yeah.
production or survival?
What-
No.
what is this going to do for me? Entertain me? I don't need that.
Yeah, it was like like
got
why,
I've
why
got
am I
other
being
things to do.
entertained? I can barely pay my rent. But now as I'm getting older, I'm starting to see like, oh man, this is really cool. Or even thinking back to some of the earlier like Roman days where they had a lot of like art focus
Yeah.
and kind of how that shaped their culture too.
Yeah, absolutely. The not to get too esoteric, but the arts is what creates lasting culture that people remember.
Right.
I mean, like the big example, is the ancient Greece. Sparta is this, which brought us, a movie, one movie, the 300.
Yeah.
And then Athens brought us everything else, right? Like, so they were rival city states, but what's remembered is not the one that was the military powerhouse. The one that was remembered is the one that had all of the writing and the painting and the vases and the sculpture and because that's what people remember into the future. So it's the art and cultural landscape that really creates longevity, and it promotes business. I mean, like even in our modern times, if you don't have entertainment in your town, then no one, like, who wants to open a business in your town? I mean, it doesn't have to be symphony or ballet necessarily, but you also, sports teams or, the zoo or, right? Like you want museums, you want entertainment of some sort. And so, I think of the Koger Center as part of the, business landscape.
For sure.
We have 2,200 people coming to a Broadway show. 60% of them on average go out to eat. A lot of them go out to eat in the neighborhood. So, the restaurateurs say like, oh, we know when you have a big show because like suddenly it's a Tuesday night and like all the tables are gone. Right. Because people have made reservations and and normally on a Tuesday night you wouldn't sell out the restaurant. So, it's an economic driver, and I think that we also get things like Scout Motors coming into the Midlands because they look at this as a place
Stuff
that
to do,
like there's a they're going to have to lure people in to work for them, and they know that they can talk people into coming to Columbia because we have stuff to do. There's a zoo, there's adventure, there's the State Museum, there's the Art Museum, there's the Koger Center. We have the Riverwalk, which is growing. There's things to do outdoor. We have Fireflies baseball for better or for worse, but to be honest with you, like I think the best baseball is Major League, and the second best baseball is Single A. Right, because I don't know what you get out of like Double A or Triple A that you don't get out of Single A.
Sure.
So if you like doing stuff in the summer outside. Like you go, because there's all the promotions and all the weird stuff that happens and whatnot.
Yeah.
And Single A ball is fun. It's entertainment.
That's my argument to get people to come watch me to play hockey.
Yeah.
I'll be like, there's
Men's
NHL,
league.
but then the next best
next
level
level
is men's league at 9:30 p.m. on a Wednesday night.
Because a guy may have an open breakaway and just eat it.
Just fall down.
And when else will you have the opportunity to see somebody trip over his own skates?
It's true.
Now, so do you go? I guess I got two questions. What's the best seat in the house? Like, if you get to choose any seat, which one are you choosing? And then, do you go to all of them?
Oh, I don't. No one can go to.
Can't go to all of them.
There's too
Not
many.
every show, but like the once that they're there for during the week.
No, I don't even go to
Oh,
all
you don't
of
even
them.
do that?
No.
Oh.
I mean, there's too many. Like you have to,
No kidding.
like you have to get away sometimes so that you can want
Yeah.
to go back.
Yeah.
But the thing that this will sound cliche, but I will say that there are no bad seats in the building.
Yeah.
There are seats that are better than others, and there are better places to sit for different kinds of things.
Stuff,
like
yeah.
depends on what it is. The second and, to be honest with you, third floor is the best place for symphony. So if you're going from a purely aural, like listening point of view,
Yeah.
the top balcony is the single best place to center for symphony.
Yeah.
I like the second floor for symphony because I like to watch them.
Yeah.
So I feel like when you're sitting in the orchestra, your view isn't as good. So I like to look down on the symphony and see what's going on. And I feel like the view is better on the second floor, and the sound is better on the second floor than it is on the first floor. And but I to be honest with you, our offices are on the third floor, and so I will often like go in and just watch the first 15 minutes of like the symphony, and from the third floor because the sound is the best up there.
Yeah.
And then I'll like watch the opening bits, and then I'll be like, all right, I'm gonna go home now. So like you get a little reminder of like why you're in the business,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
then you make it home for a late dinner. And then for ballet, I also like this either the back of the orchestra or the front of the grand tier second floor for ballet, because so you can sort of see the picture better.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're sitting too close, then it's great for small stuff.
Yeah.
But I feel like seeing the whole stage is
Sure.
nice.
I didn't know if there was like, do they train the actors and actresses to like look at one area, or like this is kind of their camera, if you will?
Yeah, they typically look at just over the heads of the people in the back row of the orchestra level.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so like for the ballet, there's windows back there, and like they have a spotting light. So
and that's got it.
that's sort of the gaze is there for most things.
Did you say the gaze?
Yeah, they're actors'
Oh,
gaze.
oh,
Their
I took
their,
that.
their view.
I took
Their
that
drishti.
differently. Is there a VIP section? Is there like a
No,
there's not like a box or anything like that somebody could
no, we're very
not there yet.
Well, we have what's called continental seating, so there's no like aisles,
Yeah.
which really has allowed us to have the number of seats that we have with relatively few rows.
Right.
So to fit 2,200 in a lot of places, you would need like 50% more rows. You'd have to go much further back. So it allows everyone to be much closer to the stage, which is why there really aren't any bad seats. Because even if you're the furthest away from the stage, you're really only like 110 feet, which is
Right.
not bad.
Yeah.
The very edges, which a lot of people like to sit in because, again, there are no aisles, so lots of people want to sit on the end, is kind of the worst seats because
Yeah.
that's the sort of the sight lines are the worst there.
Yeah.
But there, there's really sometimes it's fun to sit close, particularly if it's like a comic, right? You want to. There's not much to watch other than like their facial expressions.
Right.
So sometimes it's nice to sit in the first 3 or 4 rows for something like that, so that you can really see what their facial expressions. But it depends on the person. But often I'll tell people, like, if you're like, oh, these seats are so expensive, and I'm like, just go one price level down and just
Right.
buy the best one you can that's just slightly cheaper, because to be honest with you,
Yeah.
you probably won't notice the difference.
Right. Yep. What about tickets? I always wondered, like, do you guys just get a flat fee, or is it like, so like say Hamilton, their ticket prices are way up. Do you get a percentage of that? How does any of that work?
No, so most of what we host is rental. So we get a
Just like a
rental
flat.
We get a rental fee. We I don't know, 10 years ago implemented a per ticket restoration fee. Once we sort of hit 25 years old, and we realized that a lot of things in a building are really only meant to last 20 to 30 years. We were like, we need to start a fund so that we can fix stuff, because like stuff's starting to break. So when you buy tickets, you get $2. There's a $2 fee for every ticket that goes to building maintenance. So that's we fix the elevator with we just replaced all the seats for the first time in 35 years. You know, like that's that's where that So I know people are sometimes like why do I have to pay this fee? But and how much can $2 really help? But if you get if you sell 150,000 tickets a year, it's $300,000. You do that for a couple of years, and suddenly you can replace the seats. So the more tickets we sell, the more that goes in. The more that goes into the restoration pot, which means that we can do things like replace the carpet and replace the seats.
Right. So there's at least some incentive there. You guys want to.
Right. Yeah. But for something like Hamilton, we don't.
You're not getting a cut of that.
No.
Be nice.
No. And to be honest with you, the promoter really doesn't even get a cut of that. Like
really,
like Hamilton sort of drives. Like really drives the. Now there's other shows you negotiate like a flat fee or a flat fee plus a percentage if you go over a certain amount of ticket sales. So the promoter has a vested interest in selling more because they make more money.
Right.
But for something like Hamilton, they very much drive the price.
Yeah.
And the ticket price, we don't get to decide how much. People are like, you're charging so much, and I'm like, I'm not charging. I'm charging $2. Like they're charging the other $198. Like the $200 ticket, I still only get $2.
Yeah. Do you get to meet a lot of the talent, like the actors and actresses that come in?
I mean, sometimes. Like I could probably do it far more than I do.
Sure.
I just
has there been anybody like that you've met that you're like, wow, I'm glad I got to meet them, or yeah, I mean, well, I was really, I sort of wanted to meet Alice Cooper when Alice Cooper was at the Koger Center, but I didn't actually get to meet Alice. Yeah.
That would have been fun. I've been in this is really the only business I've ever done. And I will admit that I have, working in New York, I worked with a lot of people that were, fairly famous. I was at some, corporate meeting, and they were like, what's the most famous, one of the icebreakers was at the table, like, what's the most famous person you ever met? And then you start going like, I don't, like, and I had to be the jerk that was like, I don't know. Would you consider, like, who do you consider to be more famous? Right. Is it, you're like, is it Steve Miller or is it Kanye West or is it Paul Simon? Like, which one of them, like who's more, so I don't know. Working in an industry where you sort of run into people all the time, like I don't do it to, like
you're not like creeping outside of their.
They're busy, like right, like so. I don't know.
You're not taking secret photos of them, just with yourself in it.
So I often will go out of my way to like avoid being back there because I don't need somebody like
Yep. Has there been any weird requests from actors or actresses that you have to accommodate?
People have writers, and the writers can be, oddly specific sometimes.
Yeah.
Like,
I want 4 bottles of Aquafina and 1 bottle of
and what's changed about those oddly specific writers is that now you will get pictures of what they want,
exactly how to set it up and all that too. Yeah.
And like we want this Sargento cheese, and they'll show you a picture of what the package is. Right, so you get the right cheese.
Right.
So some people get very specific, and I sort of get it because, these are people who are living out of a tour bus. Like they're sleeping on a bus. They are getting off stage. They're taking a shower in the dressing room. They're getting on a bus. They're going to sleep on the bus. They're waking up in a, 8 to 10 hours away and doing, and you don't know what city you're in. So the only thing you've sort of got going for you is like,
looking forward to that cheese.
I'm looking forward
to
that.
Better be right.
Cheese.
I see. Yeah. That
But
makes sense.
people can get oddly specific about some stuff like that. But we haven't really, also, being the rental side of things, there's usually somebody in between you and
that has to,
yeah. So you can be like, you ask them,
right? Well,
about
and
this.
because we've done like events where they request a chiropractor, so like they come, they like
Yes.
the talent or a manager ends up reaching out to us, and we go, yeah, sure, we can be there from this time, or massage therapist or
Yes.
anything like that, which was
Absolutely.
which was pretty cool.
Yeah. So some of the dance shows, I mean, we Broadway shows will often ask us for, to have a list of people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
is there a massage therapist? Is there a chiropractor? Is there an osteopath? Is there an orthopedic surgeon? Is there an ear, nose, and throat doctor? Like,
Yes.
they want a list of, in case somebody has
Just available, and
just
even
like
for
who to-
crew or all that stuff, like the load in, load out guys, all that. They
Yeah.
love that. Yeah. I had two last questions.
Yes.
Are there any stats that you like? What stats are you guys looking at? What are what numbers?
Like,
Like,
what do you,
like
be more specific with this question. What do you want to know?
well, like, I guess, is there something where you're like hitting records? Like, are you looking at attendance records? Are you looking at dollar amounts, like biggest show? Are you looking at, like, I guess, what keeps the Koger Center thriving numbers? Like, what would be your couple things you're like, we're doing well?
Yeah, we probably do a terrible job at stats.
Like looking at
I mean, I think for us, one of the big things is just overall attendance.
Yeah.
I think we've sort of grown from something in the neighborhood of like 100 or 120,000 when I first started, and now we're at like, I think we figured out for our 23-24 season that we had like 206,000 people come through, and these are approximate numbers because not everything is ticketed, and so a lot of times you're just sort of doing an estimate of like, there's 400 to 450 in there, and that's, you might be off by 10 or 15% or something, right? So the numbers are guesstimates.
So you're looking at some of that stuff.
Yeah, but so we try to keep track of how many people come and how many different events we do, and we keep track of dollars sold because I think it's helpful when you're trying to pitch.
Right.
We don't necessarily pitch, but it helps.
Give them some idea.
Your partners pitch when people say, "Well, I don't know if we can Columbia," and you're like, "Well, they sold almost $7 million worth of tickets last year at the Koger Center. Like, they'll sell some tickets." So that kind of stuff we sort of keep track of. But for me, I think it's basically overall attendance and number of events.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
That's
And
what
my
we're trying to
last
keep
one
an eye on.
was just, is there anything drastic since you've been there that you've had to deal with during a show, like whether it's like a protest or a light falls from the ceiling or, the power goes out? What's happened over there that we need to know about?
To be honest with you, we've been remarkably lucky.
Nothing crazy.
And I'm not saying nothing crazy. I'm just saying we've been remarkably lucky. I mean, the number of events we do for 35 years. There are some horror stories. One of the worst things is things start to break after.
Right.
So we're 36 years old, and even with maintenance, things start to break. So, the front of the stage is the orchestra pit, and there's a lift that goes up and down.
Yeah.
And there's 3 rows of seats on that. And this past season, something broke, and we had sold the 80 seats on the orchestra pit.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get the seats onto the orchestra pit because the pit was broken. So then you have to reseat all of those people and try to convince them. You're like, listen, I'm sorry, but it is. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So we've had a couple of moments like that, which are no fun, and we've had some near misses with weather. Like we just had a show the 7th, 8th, and 9th of January, and loaded them out into the wee hours of the morning on the 10th, right? And then we had sleet and stuff start in the afternoon of the 10th. So but that was a bit of a blood pressure moment where you're like, what happens if it starts sleeting on the 9th and people don't want to come, and then you have to try to get trucks up the sloped ramp to the loading dock in the sleet, we've got bags of salt, but you're like, oh my goodness. So, we have a lot of near misses like that.
Yeah.
But and we've had some health scares like every
Any
once in a while.
deaths? Anybody die in the theater?
We've had I think 2 patients in 35 years die, like audience members.
Yeah.
Die.
Heart attack or something.
One of them was like brain aneurysm, like basically dead, like fell over, dead before they hit the floor, kind of thing.
Right.
Like just nothing to do with it. Like
Watching
it was
a show and then
just in the lobby, and then we've had a couple of heart attacks, and I feel like maybe one of them didn't turned out to not be I think somebody went into a situation, didn't die at the Koger Center, but
right.
But got taken to an ambulance and didn't turn out well.
Yeah.
We probably a dozen times a year somebody goes away in an ambulance. Most of the time it's just out of an abundance of caution, right? Like there's really like they don't really need the ambulance, but
is there an EMT always there?
we have a nurse.
Okay.
And if we can't have a nurse, we'll have EMT.
Yeah.
So the cutoff is about 300 to 400. If the show is less than 300 or 400 people, we don't always have it. But if a show has more than 400 people, we always have a nurse or EMT. And every once in a while it happens. Somebody has a cardiac problem or bad reaction to medication, or even just like a panic attack, or allergic reaction to something, or people will not pay attention and trip and fall and injure them. It's just stuff happens. So we've, I once not at the Koger Center, but I had a guy get up in the middle of a show. I was the stage manager. I was in the back in the little booth. Door the booth opens. This guy walks in. I'm like, excuse me, like you're in the wrong place. And he was like, oh, okay. And he turned around to go back out, and he just like went over like a tree, hit his head, and started like the pool of blood started.
Oh God.
And then, and then we had to call the EMTs came.
Right.
And you're in this booth trying to get keep the show going on while
show
they're
must
like,
go, you're screaming the show must go on.
right?
The EMTs
and
are there.
They're in there like putting a neck brace on a
Mopping up
guy,
blood.
mopping up the blood. People in the back rows are turning around going, shh.
That's
like,
good.
You're like, there's a guy dying over here. Like, just
Get the lighting right.
please, because the producer came in and was like, "What's going on back here?" And you're
Right.
like, "Don't slip in the blood."
You're like, shh.
So it does happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been pretty lucky.
Yeah.
35 years that we haven't had any really any major medical scares, and sometimes you're like, why do we have these EMTs here? But then every once in a while something happens, and you're like, well, thank goodness.
Thank goodness, yeah.
It just makes everyone feel better.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know how often that turns a simple problem from getting into a complex one.
Right.
Like, would that really make a difference? But it makes the person who's suffering the issue feel so much better that there's
Sure.
somebody there waiting with them until the ambulance comes.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's good. This has been great. This has been a
Yeah.
blast.
Good
All
stuff.
right, yeah.
I
Is,
think
is that it? Let's see.
Well, I could ask a ton more questions.
I know. I got to shut
I
it
feel
down.
like it's only been like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so tell us how people can support you then. I mean,
What's your
number
personal
one?
Instagram?
Yeah.
So they can
and,
follow you.
and cell phone number so they can text you about tickets.
Yeah. My cell phone number is 803-251-2222. The voice you get on the other end may not be mine, but
But just keep
that's
calling
the
it all
number to
night
call.
long. Yep, text it.
You can't text it. It's a landline.
Password to the show must go on.
Yeah. So
10% off. Show must go on.
we're gonna have to change that discount code. Yes, you can find tickets and information at kogercenterforthearts.com. We're part of the University of South Carolina, but like any arts organization, are chronically underfunded. You can make tax-deductible donations to the Koger
Nice.
Center, and but one of the biggest things people can do is, for any arts organization, be it something as big as us or as small as your local theater company, is choose to buy tickets and go.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times Friday night may come around and you're like, do I want to watch, a movie that I've seen 3 times
Right.
on the couch, or do I want to go out? And it's very easy to make the choice to watch the same movie you've seen 3 times on the couch.
Yep.
But particularly smaller organizations, they may be looking for, 50 people to come. So like if 6 or 7 extra people come, like it makes a big difference to
huge.
them. So one of the best ways to support the arts is to, be a actual show up, be an attender, be a supporter just through your presence. Even if it's something that's free. A lot of times you get to the end of the year and you're doing your grant reporting and you're like, they gave us this grant, and then how many people came to that show that we provided for free with this grant? And you're like, 13? That's it? Like, that doesn't look very good. You're like, let's lump all 6 of the shows together so we can, because the other ones were more well attended. So we can be like, for 6 shows, we had 612 people come. 5 of them had 599 people. And one of them had 13. Right? Like let's not point out that we only had 13 people come to that one event. But even free stuff, people are looking to, show that the money was useful. It's not so much about the quality of the work, but like, did they reach an audience? So if you go to stuff, showing up really helps because people put a lot of effort into doing what they're doing, and they appreciate it being, consumed by the audience.
Yeah, great.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Here
We're here for the health of it.
for the health of it.